Loodame, et kui koroonaviirusega seotud piirangud lõpevad, saab Helena Knopp tulla Narva ja viia läbi mitu oma kunstiprojekti. Надеемся, что когда ограничения, связанные с коронавирусом, закончатся, Helena Knopp сможет приехать в Narvu и осуществить несколько своих художественных проектов. Aga meil on praegu suurepärane võimalus kodust ja isegi ekraanilt lahkumata teha lühike reis Rootsi Norrköpingu linna. Stockholmist 170 kilomeetri lõunas asub linn, kus elab umbes 90 000 inimest. Selle ajalugu on väga sarnane Narva аялога. У нас же сейчас, уважаемые зрители, есть прекрасная возможность, не выходя из дома и даже не отходя от экрана, совершить небольшое путешествие в шведский Норрчёпинг. В 170 километрах к югу от Стокгольма расположен небольшой городок с населением около 90 000 человек. Его история очень перекликается с историей Нарвы. 19. sajandil oli Norrköping Rootsi tekstiilitööstuse üks olulisemaid keskusi. Kogu linna tööstuskeskus, mis sisaldab tehaste ja ladude hooneid Mudala jõe ääres, samuti jõel asuv tamm, on täielikult taastatud ja antud üle mitmele muuseumile. Kudumisvabriku kompleksi peetakse üheks paremini säilinud tööstusarhitektuuri monumendiks Euroopas. Nüüd on selle ruumides avatud mitu muuseumi. Linnamuuseum, töötava veskiga veskimuuseum, aga ka töömuuseum, mis räägib kunagise tekstiili gigandi töötajate igapäevaelust. Lisaks muuseumidele asuvad uues kompleksis kontserdisaal, konverentsikeskus, kaasaegne üliõpilasmaja, kohvikud, restoranid ja palju muud, mis meelitab ligi nii linna, elanikke kui ka külalisi. В XIX веке Норрчёпинг был одним из важнейших центров шведской текстильной промышленности. Весь индустриальный центр города, содержащий здания фабрик и складов, расположенных вдоль реки Мутала, а также плотины на реке, полностью отреставрирован и передан нескольким музеям. Комплекс ткацкой фабрики считается одним из наиболее сохранившихся памятников промышленной архитектуры в Европе. Сейчас в ее помещениях открыты несколько музеев. Городской музей, мельничный музей с действующей мельницей, а также музей труда, рассказывающий о жизни и буднях рабочих бывшего текстильного гиганта. Помимо музеев, в новом комплексе расположены концертный зал, конференц-центр, современное общежитие для студентов, кафе, рестораны и многое другое, что привлекает как жителей, так и гостей шведского города. Kutsume teid koos linnamuuseumi kuraatori Anette Kindalliga tegema väikese veebituuri Норрköpingi постиндустриальсel территориумil. Совершить небольшую онлайн-прогулку по постиндустриальной территории Норрчёпинга мы предлагаем вместе с куратором Городского музея Анетте Киндаль.
Hello, my name is Anette Kindahl. I work since many years as a curator at the City Museum of Norrköping, and I have seen how this area has developed over the decades. From a closed, dilapidated area of former textile factories that nobody wanted, to a thriving place full of activities. Museums, education, restaurants, coffee places, and even new exciting buildings. I'm born and raised in Norrköping. My mother worked at the last textile factory that closed down in 1970. If anybody told her in 1970 that her young daughter in the future would work as a guide in the area, telling tourists and locals about the history of Norrköping, my mother would have laughed. Who on earth would have been interested in looking at old factories, she would have said. The transformation of this industrial area, former the center of textile manufacturing in Sweden, into something new is also the story about the ever-changing history of and how we look upon the past. Industrial areas and harbors has transformed all over Europe, and today the remains of the industrialization in the mid-19th century belongs to the cultural heritage, just as much as churches and castles did in my mother's mind back in 1970. The story about the transformation of this area is the story of the river. In the 1970s, politicians in Norrköping considered to tear down the old industrial area in the center of Norrköping, while the paper mill in the other end of the area wanted to build a new power plant. In the discussion of this, both the municipality and the residents of Norrköping started to look on the area in a new way. To get as much power as possible out of the river, the idea was to let the river become an underground river, led to the turbine of the new power plant being the most efficient way. This caused a big distress of the citizens of Norrköping. You can't take the river away. It's part of our identity. Professionals like architects, scholars, and museum people threw themselves into the discussion and said, look, it's not only the river that is worth saving. Lift your heads and look around you. See all these magnificent buildings. They are also worth saving. They tell the history of Norrköping. They are also part of Norrköping's cultural heritage. But to start a transformation, you need to start with attitudes. Before anyone is prepared to invest money, the idea of the area must change. This was once an area in people's mind only of hardship, low status job, low salaries, and in the end, unemployment and misery. In 1989, Pronova was the first building that reopened, restored with money from the municipality. It opened as an office building, primarily for small businesses to rent office space. In 1989, we had the first digital boom, so many of the companies that moved in were working with computers. Once again, around 400 people worked in the building. In its former heydays, 100 years ago, around 400 people worked in the building making cotton. In 1989, it was 400 men. 100 years ago, it was 400 women. First in the area to reopen was the City Museum of Norrköping, already in 1981. And 10 years later, in 1991, the Museum of Work opened. The main transformation in the area took place during the mid-90s with both private investors and money from the municipality. When the paper mill moved out, the old paper mill turned into a concert hall. A branch of the university moved into the area along with private high schools. In the beginning, it was said that old factories could not be turned into apartments, but around the millennium, this was not true any longer. And in 1915, even new buildings were allowed, such as this award-winning apartment building in the middle of the area called Katja. And still construction is going on. The area will never be fixed in its past, but is moving on towards the future. The water was saved. Half of it goes underground to the turbine of this power plant. The rest takes its natural way. Today, my mother, as all people of Norrköping, is very proud of the area and are eager to show it. It has become a tourist attraction. New pathways along the river gives everybody new sights, only restricted to the people that worked in the factories. When I asked my mother if she enjoyed the spectacular views of the waterfalls and the majestic buildings when she was working behind the big windows, she says, "No, we never looked out of the windows. We looked to the other side, where the exit was." Remember, any transformation has to start in people's mind.